The story of David and Goliath. We need to ask ourselves, who is Goliath? Well, Goliath is a warrior. He has spear, he has armor, he has this great body, this great build. He's a Hebrew, much like David, but he's different than David. He's different because he's a warrior. He's part of a warrior class of people. He is a Hebraic pagan. He has his tribe with him, and he's trying to solve a conflict through violence, through war, because it seems like the other side, they don't understand anything anymore except the language of the sword. So Goliath, much like other characters in the Bible that come before him, like Cain, like Esau, are hairy, like big, hardworking men. Goliath is the champion of this. The tribe is the Philistines, or Philistines, and he is what I believe to be the remnant of the Nephilim. The Nephilim, which they are said to be angels. I don't believe that they're angels. I think that they're pagan deities, which emerge out of the collective unconscious of the pagan Hebraic people, but also, much like many things, they don't just stem from the people, but they stem from nature and from the divine. So as a top-down kind of understanding of these angels, it's like we didn't make up Odin, right? Odin was already there since the dawn of everything, So there's always been the divinity. So the Nephilim that bred with the women, it's the women who are basically just choosing for themselves what they want to breed into the world. The women who have the self-determination in order to choose their own genetics and to choose a strong warrior man, for example, it's nature-based. That's why that they're kind of apart from the rest of the Judaic construction that's being built in the Torah. It's and that's why they're not well seen. It's because they're very they're wild, they're undomesticated, they're pagan, they're dangerous, they're like a major threat to the installation of Judaism, which is what's basically happening in the Torah. It's happening, and it's like a metaphor for it happening all the time, everywhere. It's just that at one point it happened first. It's not in the Bible that it's the first time. I don't think so. I think it happened, and then the Bible, it was written in order to explain all these things in strange codes. And now that I've been able to read it properly without, thinking like it's a story or that it's real or that it's, often people say, well, it's metaphorical or something, but they don't read it properly because they're still in the Semitic paradigm. But once you get out of the paradigm and then you see it for what it is, you're like, oh my gosh, this is like a folkish plan. It's like a plan for folkish race preservation / their weird game that they decided to play, on the rest of humanity and their own people, which is what's happening in the story of David and Goliath. Goliath that's it. And it's been said that the Philistines are the one of the last tribes that had Nephilim blood in it. So we can imagine these warriors as being really strong, really powerful, pagan warriors, kind of like the Hyperboreans for the Europeans. It's like the Philistines with the Nephilim blood. They're like the last of the Atlantis people, but for the Hebrews, And he decides to declare war against David and his people and their shepherds. And of course, they're not shepherds of sheep. That would be retarded. What's wrong with shepherds? Why do you have to declare war against a person that has a bunch of sheep? That's kind of really strange. If you're a warrior, you could just take his sheep, and be like, hey, if you don't allow this, your puny little scrawny self, well, I'm just gonna, take them by force. But of course, They're not shepherds of sheep. They're shepherds of humans. They're human domesticators. It's very obvious once you actually start reading the Bible. So David is told to have a sling, that he's a little boy, that he's some sort of like already subversive shit that the Jews are starting to do here, where they're like, look, it's just this little cat, and he just has like no armor, and he has a sling, and he's going to defeat this giant like warrior who thinks he's so great because he uses violence, or he uses the systematic construct of war in order to get things across. But like, what have these human shepherds been doing? They're probably doing like really messed up stuff, like sacrificing children, as they do often in the Torah later on. And have they done it before? Has it happened? Yeah, it's totally happened. The whole Abraham, Isaac thing, and like Topiah, and all that stuff, like, it's already happened. So the Philistines are probably like, what the hell, this is disgusting, we need to get rid of these, like, this weird construction that's been happening, this, and clearly they were prompted. And so Goliath, who's the champion, says, like, you'll never be able to defeat me as a little boy like that with a sling. And he says, if you, I gotta get the line. So 1 Samuel 17, verse 9. If he is able to fight with me and kill me, then we will be your servants. But if I prevail against him and kill him, then you shall be our servants and serve us. And the Philistine said, I defy the ranks of Israel this day. Give me a man that we may fight together. And so the problem here with the Israelites is that they don't have warriors. And so they're like shaking, right? They're like really shaking in their shoes kind of stuff. And so they have this champion David who comes forth. So then David and Goliath fight, and 1 Samuel 17, verse 48, it starts. When the Philistine arose and came and drew near to meet David, David ran quickly toward the battle line to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag and took out a stone and slung it and struck the Philistine on his forehead. The stone sank into his forehead, and he fell on his face to the ground. Wow, that's crazy, considering the fact that this is an allegory. This is completely allegorical. This has never happened physically. This is no, like, a lot of myths are like this too. It's not that weird. It's not like, oh, you're pulling this by the strings. This is clearly like an account of a warrior, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, right. Okay, like, first of all, Goliath should have worn a helm. God, what's up with not wearing a helm? I think he was probably overconfident. He was like, I don't need a helm. I need to see this little twerp. Okay. So the sling, the stone, the forehead, the sinking into the forehead, which is really creepy, is totally an allegory for David being part of the Judaic construction, the Israelite tribe, and taking over the frontal cortex of the pagan, Hebraic peoples. The stone is like a psy-op, what we would know today as a psy-op, some sort of metaphysical construction, right? That's going to go into the conscious mind of the conscious and unconscious, but the frontal cortex is all where the memory is, and it's a very important part of the brain. And you're going to literally sink something into the brain through the frontal cortex. And what happens, as I said before, the Philistines become slaves of the Israelites. And this is just what happens. This is just what they say. Like, if you defeat us, you will be masters over us. It's not like this thing where they made some pact, like, this is what's going to happen because this is what we decide. this is what's happening because this is what's happening. Like, this is what is going to happen. This will be the result, no matter what. There's no real pact here. It's like they took over the mind of the last of the Nephilim, the last of the pagan spirit, and the last of the collective, the true collective unconscious of the Hebraic peoples. And you might say, like, well, they're different peoples, they're not really the same. Well, they have been different for a little while, clearly, because one of them branched off from the collective unconscious to do this project, which is really weird. And, it's very unnatural. And so, they used their minds and they took over that way. So that's the story, like that's the real life mythical and allegorical understanding of this story. It's not like that David is some great kid with a sling and a rock and he just like got a really good shot into the forehead. I mean, you'd have to have to really kill a man with a rock, you'd have to have a major good swing. I mean, you know what I mean? Like, it seems so convenient because it's not really physically happening. It's totally a metaphor. So that was the big one that I really liked, and I really thought it was really important to think about. I really recommend you go check out 1 Samuel 17, because I think there's a lot of, everything that I've said, there's a lot more of it. There's a lot more proof if you want more proof, I think it's very interesting. And, it's, So thank you for listening, and I'll be talking more about this. And I just wanted to kind of start with this one because I thought it was really interesting. So thank you for tuning in, and I'll be back with new videos.